The massive chamber stretched beyond human comprehension, its crystalline walls reaching so high they disappeared into swirling mists of alien gases. Ambassador David Kane stood alone on the defendant's platform, a tiny figure dwarfed by the enormous semicircle of beings that represented the governing power of 3,000 worlds. The air itself hummed with energy from a dozen different atmospheric processors, creating a breathable mix for species that had never shared the same sky. Above him, the Vorthak Prime Arbiter loomed like a living mountain, its tentacles writhing in patterns that spoke of barely contained fury. To his left, the crystalline Kelthani representatives chimed in harmonic frequencies that made his teeth ache. On his right, the insectoid Zex delegation clicked and buzzed in their ancient tongue, while behind them all, the shadow-wrapped forms of the Nexari watched with eyes like dying stars. Kane had studied every one of these species for the past 3 years, memorizing their customs, their languages, their histories of conquest and submission. Now facing the combined might of galactic civilization, he felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on his shoulders like the gravity of a collapsing star. Species designation human, the Prime Arbiter's voice boomed through universal translators, each word dripping with disdain. You stand accused of 17 violations of galactic law, your expansion into restricted sectors, your mining operations in protected space, your military buildup in direct defiance of council mandates. The creature's massive form shifted, causing the platform to vibrate. How do you answer these charges? The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the soft whisper of alien breathing. Representatives from across the galaxy leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused on the small human figure who dared to stand before their supreme authority. Kane straightened his shoulders and spoke in a clear, calm voice that carried to every corner of the vast space. Honored Arbiter, I stand before you not as a defendant but as the voice of a free people. Earth formally rejects the jurisdiction of this council and all claims of authority over human space. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Alien voices rose in a cacophony of outrage, chittering, roaring, and harmonizing in frequencies that would have driven most humans mad. The Zex delegates reared up on their hind legs, their mandibles clicking in rapid-fire bursts of indignation. The Kelthani representatives' chimes became a discordant shriek of disbelief, but Kane remained perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the chaos with eyes that held no fear. He had practiced this moment in his mind 1,000 times, had war-gamed every possible response. What happened next would determine whether humanity joined the ranks of the subjugated or carved out its own destiny among the stars. The Prime Arbiter's tentacles lashed through the air, demanding silence. When the chamber finally quieted, its voice carried a note of dangerous disbelief. Impossible. No species has ever rejected council authority. Compliance is not optional. It is the law of the galaxy. Kane smiled then, an expression that made several alien representatives recoil instinctively. There was something predatory in that smile, something that spoke of teeth and claws hidden beneath diplomatic courtesy. With respect, honored Arbiter, your laws apply only to those who agree to be bound by them. Earth never signed your accords. We were never invited to join your council as equals. Instead, you sent us demands, ultimatums, threats disguised as diplomatic communications. Kane's voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. You offered us the choice between submission and destruction. We choose a third option. The Nexari representative spoke for the first time, its voice like the whisper of solar wind across dead worlds. And what option is that, little human? Kane's smile widened, and for a moment, every predator instinct in the chamber recognized something far more dangerous than fangs or claws or poisoned stingers. They recognized intelligence, planning, and absolute certainty. War, Kane said simply. The word hung in the air like a blade, cutting through 3,000 years of established galactic order. In all the recorded history of the Council, no species had ever chosen open warfare against the combined might of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. It was suicide, madness, the desperate act of a primitive people who didn't understand the forces they were challenging. But as alien representatives began to voice their outrage and disbelief, a few of the more observant beings noticed something that would later be recognized as the first sign of humanity's true nature. Ambassador Kane never once looked toward the emergency beacon that should have summoned Earth's defensive fleet. His hands never moved toward the communication device that would call for reinforcements. Instead, he stood there with that predatory smile, waiting patiently for the chaos to subside, as if he knew something that the greatest minds in the galaxy could not fathom, as if humanity had been planning for this moment long before their ships ever left their home system. The Prime Arbiter's tentacles writhed in patterns of growing confusion and anger. You declare war on the entire galaxy? Your single world against 3,000 civilizations? Your primitive fleet against our combined armadas? Kane nodded once, a simple gesture that somehow carried the weight of absolute conviction. That is correct, Honored Arbiter. Then you have chosen extinction, the creature rumbled. Your species will be eliminated within days. Your world will be cleansed of your presence. You will serve as an example to any other primitive species that might consider defying galactic law. The human ambassador's smile never wavered. Perhaps. But I think you'll find that we humans have a talent for surprising people who underestimate us. He paused, letting his words sink in. You've spent the last hour telling me about your fleets, your weapons, your overwhelming superiority. But you haven't asked the most important question. Several alien representatives leaned forward despite themselves, caught by something in the human's tone that spoke of hidden knowledge. What question? The Prime Arbiter demanded. Kane's eyes swept the assembled representatives, taking in their weapons, their armor, their confident postures. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of cold amusement that made the chamber's temperature seem to drop several degrees. You haven't asked where the rest of humanity's fleet is. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Retribution, watching her tactical display with the cold satisfaction of a chess master who had just revealed a winning strategy. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency of people who knew they were about to make history. Admiral, her communications officer reported, Ambassador Kane has made the declaration. The Council has responded with threats of immediate military action. Stone nodded, her eyes never leaving the holographic display that showed the positions of 12 different galactic fleets converging on Earth space, the Vorthak War Armada with their energy-draining dreadnoughts, the Zek swarm fleets with their bioengineered hunter-killers, the mechanical precision of the Syntax Collective's cybernetic vessels. Each one represented the military might of civilizations that had conquered hundreds of worlds. By every calculation, every strategic analysis, every military doctrine known to galactic warfare, humanity was about to be crushed like an insect beneath the combined weight of 3,000 years of imperial expansion. Stone allowed herself a thin smile. The calculations were wrong. All ships, this is Admiral Stone, she broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. Initiate stealth field deactivation. Reveal Phase 1 deployment. Throughout Earth's solar system, space itself seemed to shimmer and twist as advanced cloaking technology shut down. Where moments before there had been empty void, now massive shapes materialized like phantoms emerging from a dream. Not dozens of ships, not hundreds, but thousands upon thousands of vessels arranged in precise formations that spoke of careful planning and meticulous preparation. The alien fleet's sensors went mad, their tactical displays lighting up with contact warnings as ship after ship appeared on their screens. The Vorthak fleet commander, a creature that had never known defeat in 2 centuries of warfare, stared at readings that made no sense. The humans had somehow hidden an entire armada in their own star system without any of the galaxy's most advanced detection networks noticing. Sir, his tactical officer reported in the Vorthak tongue, we're reading over 800 vessels in the Earth system alone. No, wait, the count is still rising. 900. 1,000. The sensors are having difficulty getting an accurate reading. Similar conversations were happening across all 12 fleets as commanders tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The Zek swarm leader chittered in confusion as her biosensors detected metallic signatures that seemed to phase in and out of existence. The Syntax Collective's mechanical minds processed and reprocessed the data, unable to understand how their quantum sensors had failed to detect such a massive military presence. But the real shock came when the human fleet began to move. Instead of forming traditional battle lines or adopting any known galactic combat formation, the Earthships scattered like seeds on solar wind. Groups of vessels broke off from the main force and vanished again, disappearing from sensors as if they had never existed. Others accelerated toward jump points that led to seemingly random destinations across the galaxy. They're running, the Kelthani fleet commander chimed to his subordinates. The humans are scattering their forces in panic. The assessment seemed logical. Faced with overwhelming odds, the primitive species was attempting to preserve what ships they could by fleeing in all directions. It was a common tactic among defeated civilizations, though it usually only delayed the inevitable. Admiral Stone watched the tactical display as her carefully orchestrated plan unfolded exactly as rehearsed. Earth's fleets weren't fleeing at all. They were deploying to predetermined positions across the galaxy, each group equipped with specific intelligence about their intended targets. 3 years of covert observation, stolen communications, and careful analysis had given humanity something the galaxy had never seen before. Perfect intelligence about every major fleet, every strategic position, every weakness in the Council's military structure. Phase 2 vessels are in position, her tactical officer reported. Phase 3 fleets are beginning their approach runs. Stone nodded, feeling the weight of humanity's gamble settling around her shoulders. They weren't just fighting a war. They were rewriting the rules of galactic conflict. For 3,000 years, warfare between civilizations had followed predictable patterns. Fleets would mass, meet in designated battle zones, and fight until one side achieved decisive victory. It was civilized, controlled, and utterly predictable. Humanity had studied those patterns and decided to ignore them completely. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving surrender demands from 6 different fleets. They're offering to accept our unconditional submission if we recall our ships immediately." "Standard response," Stone replied. "Tell them that humanity appreciates their concern, but we'll be handling this our way." On the main screen, Ambassador Kane's image appeared, broadcasting from the council chamber. The alien representatives were in chaos, their carefully ordered hierarchy crumbling as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human ships had appeared in sectors that should have been impossible to reach. Colonies that had been secure for centuries were suddenly reporting unknown vessels in their outer systems. "How is this possible?" The Prime Arbiter's voice boomed through Stone's speakers. "Your species achieved faster-than-light travel barely 50 years ago. You lack the technology for such coordinated deployment." Kane's response carried across every communication channel in the galaxy. "Honored Arbiter, you're making the same mistake that every empire in galactic history has made. You're assuming that primitive technology means primitive thinking." Stone felt a surge of pride as she watched her crews work with mechanical precision. Humanity might not have had the most advanced ships or the most powerful weapons, but they had something far more valuable: the ability to think in ways that the galaxy's established powers couldn't comprehend. "Admiral," her sensor officer reported, "the Vorthak fleet is beginning to advance. They're moving toward Earth in standard battle formation." "Let them come," Stone replied. "Signal the Luna defense grid. It's time to show them what human engineering looks like when we're properly motivated." Around Earth's moon, massive structures that had been disguised as mining platforms began to unfold like mechanical flowers. Weapons emplacements emerged from hidden positions, their barrels tracking the approaching alien fleet with the patient precision of hunters who had been waiting for their prey to walk into the perfect trap. The Vorthak fleet. Commander realized his mistake just as the first salvo of human weapons lit up the void. These weren't the primitive kinetic weapons his intelligence reports had described. These were something entirely different. Something that seemed to bypass his ship's energy shields and tear through their armored hulls like they were made of paper. "Impossible," he rumbled in his native tongue. "Our intelligence said they only had chemical rockets and nuclear weapons." His tactical officer's reply carried a note of panic that no Vorthak warrior should ever have felt. "Sir, our intelligence was wrong. These humans have been lying to us. About everything." Across the galaxy, 12 different fleets were discovering the same terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't been hiding just one fleet in their home system. They had been hiding their true technological capabilities for decades, feeding false information to galactic intelligence networks while secretly developing weapons and tactics that no established civilization could counter. Admiral Stone watched as the first phase of humanity's war began in earnest. In 7 star systems, human forces were engaging alien fleets that had expected easy victories and found themselves fighting an enemy that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. The galaxy had wanted to judge humanity by their laws. Now they would learn to fear humanity by their own. Captain Alex Torres gripped the armrests of his command chair as the Earth defense ship Valkyrie dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zhek's home system. Through the view screen, he could see the massive bioships of the enemy fleet arranged in their traditional hunting formation, living vessels that pulsed with organic energy and bred smaller fighter craft like some nightmare version of deep-sea creatures. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "sensors show 47 Zhek's bioships ranging from destroyer to dreadnought class. They're beginning to advance toward our position." Torres nodded, studying the enemy formation with the careful attention of a predator evaluating its prey. The Zheks had been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years using the same basic strategy. Overwhelm enemy forces with sheer numbers of regenerating bioships that could heal from almost any damage. Their vessels were living organisms, capable of growing new weapon pods, repairing hull breaches, and even reproducing during extended campaigns. Against any conventional fleet, they were nearly unstoppable. But humanity had stopped thinking conventionally the moment they decided to challenge the galaxy. "All ships, this is Captain Torres," he broadcast to his squadron. "Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. Deploy nanite payloads on my mark." The human fleet split into seemingly random patterns, confusing the Zhek's formation commanders who had evolved their tactics around predictable enemy movements. But Torres's ships weren't following galactic naval doctrine. They were implementing strategies developed from studying Earth's own military history, adapted for warfare among the stars. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "the Zhek's fleet commander is broadcasting on standard diplomatic frequencies. She's demanding our immediate surrender." "Put her through," Torres ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the chitinous features of a Zhek's war leader, her compound eyes glittering with predatory confidence. Behind her, the organic walls of her bioship pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of barely contained aggression. "Human vessels," she clicked in accented standard galactic. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. My bioships will regenerate from any damage you inflict, while your primitive metal constructs will be torn apart by my hunting swarms. Surrender now, and your crews will be granted quick deaths." Torres smiled, the same predatory expression that Ambassador Kane had worn in the council chamber. "War leader, I appreciate your confidence, but you're making a fundamental error in your tactical assessment." The Zhek's commander's head tilted in a gesture of confused irritation. "What error, Metalship? You're assuming we plan to fight you the way every other species has fought you for the past 1,000 years, Torres replied. "We don't." The human ship suddenly accelerated, not toward the Zhek's formation but around it, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the bioship's main weapon clusters. As they moved, each vessel released clouds of microscopic particles that dispersed through the void, like metallic snow. "What are those?" the Zhek's commander demanded, her compound eyes tracking the strange deployment. "Nanomachines," Torres said calmly, "specifically designed to interfere with biological processes. We've spent the last 3 years studying samples of Zhek's biomatter recovered from border skirmishes. We know exactly how your regeneration works." The effect was immediate and devastating. The microscopic machines, programmed with detailed knowledge of Zhek's physiology, began attacking the bioship's healing mechanisms at the cellular level. Vessels that should have been able to repair themselves from massive damage found their biological systems failing, their organic hulls developing spreading patches of dead tissue that could no longer respond to regeneration commands. "Impossible," the war leader chittered, watching her fleet's greatest advantage being systematically neutralized. "No species has ever developed countermeasures to our biotechnology. No species has ever had the time to study your biotechnology the way we have," Torres corrected. "You see, war leader, while you were busy conquering primitive civilizations, we were busy learning how to kill you." 3 systems away, Commander Lisa Park watched a very different kind of battle unfold as her stealth cruiser observed a Kelthani mind control fleet attempting to subjugate a human colony. The crystalline aliens had built their empire through psychic domination, using their natural telepathic abilities to turn enemy crews against each other, or simply shut down their higher brain functions entirely. "Commander," her science officer reported, "the Kelthani vessels are beginning their psychic assault on the colony. Standard procedure would be to attempt mental contact with the human population." Park nodded, checking the readings on her neural dampening field. Every human ship and colony had been equipped with the technology after their first encounter with psychic aliens. It was crude, uncomfortable, and made complex thinking difficult. But it had one crucial advantage. It made human minds effectively invisible to telepathic contact. "Signal the colony," Park ordered. "Tell them to activate their mental shielding and prepare for counterattack." The Kelthani fleet moved into position above the human settlement, their crystalline ships resonating with psychic energy as they prepared to dominate the minds of the colonists below. For 3,000 years, this tactic had never failed. Biological minds simply couldn't resist the coordinated telepathic assault of an entire Kelthani fleet. The first wave of psychic energy washed over the colony like an invisible tsunami, carrying the irresistible command to surrender. The Kelthani fleet commander waited for the usual response. Confused transmissions, internal fighting, eventual capitulation as the human population turned against their own leadership. Instead, silence. "Commander," his psychic officer chimed in harmonics of confusion. "I'm not detecting any human minds on the surface. It's as if the entire population has simply vanished from psychic space." The fleet commander's crystalline form flickered with patterns of irritation. "Impossible. Scan for life signs. The humans must be there." "They are there, sir. Thousands of them. But they're invisible. I can't make psychic contact with any of them." Before the commander could respond, the colony's defense platforms opened fire. But these weren't conventional weapons. Instead of energy beams or kinetic projectiles, they broadcast precisely calibrated psychic static, frequencies that humans couldn't even perceive, but that sent the telepathic Kelthani crews into agonizing sensory overload. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as humanity's fleets engaged their enemies using tactics that no galactic civilization had ever encountered. The Mechanical Syntax Collective found their hacking attempts useless against human ships that used analog control systems, too primitive to infiltrate. The energy-absorbing Vorthak vessels discovered that kinetic weapons didn't provide energy to absorb. The swarm tactics of the Kixarian fleets proved ineffective against human ships that could operate independently. Without central coordination, Admiral. Stone watched the tactical displays from her command center, tracking 17 different engagements across 12 star systems. The pattern was becoming clear. Humanity was winning not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple expedient of fighting in ways their enemies couldn't predict or counter. "Admiral," her intelligence officer reported, "we're intercepting communications from several enemy fleets. They're requesting reinforcements, but the fleet commanders can't seem to explain what they're facing." "The reports are confused." Stone nodded, understanding the aliens' confusion perfectly. For 3,000 years, galactic warfare had followed established patterns. Species fought using their strengths against their enemies' weaknesses. But those strengths and weaknesses were known quantities. The Zeks always used bioships. The Kelthani always relied on psychic domination. The Syntax Collective always attempted technological infiltration. Humanity had studied all of these patterns and prepared specific countermeasures for each one. But more than that, they had done something that no established galactic power could comprehend. They had deliberately designed their military technology to be adaptable rather than specialized. "Sir," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Ambassador Kane. The Council is demanding explanations for our military capabilities." Stone smiled, imagining the chaos that must be erupting in the Council chamber as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. "Tell the ambassador that he's authorized to share the truth. All of it, ma'am. It's time to let them know what they're really fighting," Stone said, her voice carrying the cold satisfaction of a hunter who had successfully cornered her prey. "They wanted to judge us by their standards. Now they can learn to fear us by our own." Ambassador David Kane stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber, but this time the massive space felt different. Half the representative seats sat empty. Their occupants fled or dead. The crystalline walls that had once pulsed with confident bioluminescence now flickered with uncertain patterns, as if the chamber itself reflected the growing panic of the galaxy's ruling elite. "Explain this," the Prime Arbiter's voice boomed, its tentacles writhing in patterns of barely controlled rage. "Explain how your primitive species is systematically destroying fleets that have conquered thousands of worlds." Around the chamber, the remaining alien representatives leaned forward with desperate attention. In the past 72 hours, their carefully ordered galaxy had descended into chaos. The Zeks biofleets, unstoppable for a millennium, were dying from diseases that attacked their regeneration. The Kelthani mind control armadas found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't even perceive psychically. The mighty Syntax Collective watched helplessly as their technological superiority proved useless against analog systems that predated their own computational frameworks. Kane smiled, the same predatory expression that had first unsettled the Council 3 days ago. But now that smile carried the weight of undeniable victory, and every alien in the chamber recognized it for what it was, the look of an apex predator that had finally revealed its true nature. "You want explanations?" Kane asked, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "Very well. But first, let me correct a fundamental misunderstanding that has colored every interaction between humanity and the galactic community." He gestured to the chamber around him, taking in the towering walls and the assembled representatives of 3,000 civilizations. "You've spent our entire relationship thinking of Earth as a primitive backwater, a single world populated by barely sapient creatures who stumbled into space travel through blind luck. You measured our worth by your standards, judged our capabilities by your expectations, and dismissed our potential because we didn't fit your established patterns." The Nexari representative spoke from its shadow-wrapped alcove, its voice like stellar wind across dead worlds. "Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your ships are crude metal constructs. Your weapons are primitive kinetic devices. These are observable facts, and are they?" Kane asked, and touched a control on his wrist communicator. The chamber's central holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of human space that made several alien representatives recoil in shock. Instead of the single star system they had expected, the display revealed a network of over 200 worlds, connected by shipping lanes that stretched across a significant portion of the galaxy's outer rim. "Impossible," the Prime Arbiter rumbled. "Our surveys show only one inhabited human world." "Your surveys show what we wanted them to show," Kane replied calmly. "For the past 50 years, every probe you sent into our space encountered carefully staged scenarios designed to reinforce your assumptions about our primitive nature. The single world you discovered was a decoy, populated by volunteers who played their roles perfectly." The display shifted, revealing massive industrial complexes hidden in asteroid fields, secret shipyards in the depths of nebulae, and research facilities that had been producing advanced technology while maintaining the illusion of primitive development. "You see," Kane continued, "humanity learned about galactic civilization long before we revealed ourselves to you. We intercepted your communications, studied your histories, analyzed your technologies. We spent decades preparing for this eventual contact, and we quickly realized that revealing our true capabilities would result in immediate subjugation or destruction." The Kelthani representative's crystalline form flickered with patterns of disbelief. "You deceived the entire galaxy for half a century?" "We survived the entire galaxy for half a century," Kane corrected. "And we used that time productively. While you saw primitive chemical rockets, we were developing quantum drive systems. While you observed basic nuclear technology, we were perfecting matter manipulation on the molecular level. While you dismissed our crude computers, we were building analytical networks that could predict your tactical responses with 97% accuracy." Admiral Stone's image appeared on the display, broadcasting from her command ship. Around her, tactical screens showed the current status of human forces across the galaxy, and the numbers made the remaining council members recoil in horror. "Admiral Stone will now brief you on the current military situation," Kane announced. Stone's voice carried the professional tone of someone delivering a situation report to defeated enemies. "As of this moment, human forces control 43 star systems, have destroyed or captured 68% of all Council military assets, and have successfully neutralized the command structures of 7 major galactic powers." The display zoomed in on specific battle zones, showing Zek's bioships dissolving under nanite attacks, Kelthani vessels drifting powerless after psychic overload, and Syntax collective fleets shut down by viruses designed by human children. "But Admiral," the Prime Arbiter managed to say, "your forces are vastly outnumbered. Even with these deceptions, you cannot possibly have enough ships to maintain such widespread operations." Stone's smile was as cold as the void between stars. "That's where you're wrong, Honored Arbiter. You're still thinking in terms of traditional galactic warfare, where victory depends on having bigger fleets and more powerful weapons. We don't fight that way. The display shifted again, revealing the true scope of humanity's strategy. Instead of massive fleets engaging in decisive battles, human forces were operating in small, independent units that struck at carefully selected targets before disappearing back into the vastness of space. "We don't need to destroy your entire military," Stone explained. "We just need to make it impossible for you to coordinate your response. Every command ship we eliminate creates chaos in your chain of command. Every supply depot we capture weakens your ability to maintain extended operations. Every communication relay we destroy forces your fleets to operate in isolation." Kane stepped forward, his expression serious for the first time since the crisis began. "You wanted to know how a primitive species could challenge the established order of the galaxy. The answer is simple. We're not primitive. We never were. We're just different." The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. For 3,000 years, galactic civilization had operated under the assumption that technological advancement followed predictable patterns. Species developed faster than light travel, then energy weapons, then artificial intelligence, then psychic enhancement or biological manipulation. Each civilization chose a path and specialized in it, becoming powerful but predictable. Humanity had chosen a different approach entirely. Instead of specializing, they had generalized. Instead of developing overwhelming strength in one area, they had developed adaptability across all areas. They had studied every form of galactic technology and developed counters for each one, while keeping their own capabilities hidden until the moment of revelation. "The war is over," Kane announced, his voice echoing through the nearly empty chamber. "Not because we've destroyed you, but because we've proven that your way of thinking about power and civilization is fundamentally flawed. You've spent 3 millennia conquering and subjugating, believing that might makes right, and that technological superiority equals cultural superiority." He gestured to the tactical display, where human ships were systematically dismantling the last organized resistance to their expansion. "We offer you a choice, the same choice we've offered to every other species we've encountered. Join us as equals in a new form of galactic civilization, one based on cooperation rather than domination. Or continue fighting a war you cannot win." The Prime Arbiter's massive form slumped in defeat, its tentacles hanging limp. Around the chamber, the few remaining representatives exchanged looks of desperate calculation, weighing their options against the reality of human military superiority. "How do we know you won't simply become the new oppressors?" the Nixari representative asked. Kane's smile returned, but this time it carried warmth instead of threat. "Because oppression requires the ability to control other species, and we've designed our entire civilization around the principle that control is impossible. We can defend ourselves, we can defeat our enemies, but we can't rule over unwilling subjects. We don't want to." The truth of his words was evident in the tactical display. In every system they had captured, human forces had immediately begun establishing cooperative governments with local populations. Instead of installing military governors or puppet regimes, they were building partnerships based on mutual benefit and shared defense. The galaxy was learning that humanity hadn't just won a war. They had redefined what victory meant. 6 months after humanity's declaration of war, the old Galactic Council chamber stood empty and dark. The crystalline walls no longer pulsed with bioluminescence, and the massive seats that had once held the galaxy's most powerful beings gathered dust in the artificial atmosphere. The age of the Council was over, ended not by conquest but by revolution. Admiral Rebecca Stone walked through the abandoned chamber, her footsteps echoing in the vast space as she made her way to the central platform, where Ambassador Kane had first challenged the established order. Now she stood where the Prime Arbiter had once loomed, looking out at rows of empty seats that represented 3,000 years of galactic domination. Behind her, Ambassador Kane emerged from one of the side passages, no longer wearing the formal diplomatic attire of Earth's representative to a hostile council. Instead, he wore the simple blue uniform of the newly formed Terran Defense Alliance, an organization that now counted over 800 species as voluntary members. "Admiral," Kane said, joining her on the platform, "the final vote tallies are in from the Outer Rim territories. 93% in favor of joining the Alliance. The few holdouts are requesting observer status while they consider their options." Stone nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful as she gazed out at the empty chamber. Sometimes I wonder if we did the right thing. 3,000 years of galactic order, shattered in 6 months. Entire civilizations that defined themselves by their place in the council hierarchy, suddenly forced to find new identities. Kane followed her gaze to the vacant seats. The Jax war clans have adapted faster than anyone predicted. Without their bioships to maintain through constant warfare, they're discovering talents for engineering and biological research. The Kelthani are using their psychic abilities for communication and conflict resolution instead of domination. Even the Syntax Collective is exploring concepts of individual identity within their network structure. And the former council leadership? Most have accepted positions in the Alliance. The Prime Arbiter has become our liaison with deep space exploration missions. His tentacles are apparently excellent for manipulating complex equipment in zero gravity. Kane's expression carried a hint of amusement. Who would have thought that beings bred for intimidation would make excellent research coordinators? Stone smiled despite herself, then turned serious again. Reports from the frontier? Better than expected. The Alliance fleet encountered another species last week. The Tyranny from the Galactic Core region. They arrived with a massive armada, expecting to find the usual council bureaucracy that they could either intimidate or bribe into submission. And instead, they found Captain Torres waiting for them with a single cruiser and a diplomatic offer to discuss trade agreements. Kane's smile widened. Apparently, the Tyranny commander was so confused by the concept of voluntary cooperation that he agreed to talks just to understand what we were proposing. The two humans walked toward the chamber's exit, passing beneath the towering archway that had once symbolized the galaxy's absolute authority. Now it served as a monument to the idea that even the most established power structures could be changed when someone was willing to think differently. The real test will come when we encounter a truly hostile species, Stone said as they emerged into the corridor beyond. One that can't be reasoned with, can't be negotiated with, and won't accept any form of cooperation. Kane considered this as they made their way toward the transport bay. Do you think such a species exists? Statistically, it's inevitable. The galaxy is vast, and somewhere out there is a civilization that's devoted itself entirely to conquest and destruction. When we meet them, all our diplomatic solutions and cooperative frameworks won't matter. It'll come down to pure military capability. They reached the transport bay, where the sleek lines of a human courier ship waited to carry them back to Alliance headquarters. But before boarding, Kane paused to look back at the council complex. Its massive structures now serving as administrative centers for the Alliance's growing bureaucracy. You know what the difference will be? He asked. What's that? When we encounter that hypothetical enemy, we won't be facing them alone. Every species in the Alliance will have a stake in stopping them, not because they're forced to follow our orders, but because they'll be defending their own freedom. Kane gestured toward the bustling activity around them, where beings from dozens of different worlds worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The Council ruled through fear and dominated through superior technology. When they faced a truly dangerous enemy, they could only respond with greater force or more oppressive control. But the Alliance... He paused, watching a mixed crew of humans, former Zex warriors, and Kelthani technicians collaborating on a new ship design. The Alliance responds by becoming stronger through cooperation. Every new member species brings new perspectives, new technologies, new ways of solving problems. Stone followed his gaze, seeing the truth in his observation. In just 6 months, human technology had advanced decades through collaboration with alien sciences. Shek's biological engineering, combined with human adaptability, had produced medical advances that were saving lives across hundreds of worlds. Kelthani psychic research merged with human psychology was creating new forms of communication that transcended species barriers. Admiral Stone, her communicator crackled with a priority message. We're receiving reports from the exploration fleet in Sector 447. They've made contact with a new species, the Valdris. Initial communications are promising, but they're requesting Alliance representatives for formal first contact protocols. Stone exchanged a look with Kane, both of them recognizing the significance of the moment. This would be the first time that humanity encountered a completely unknown species as representatives of the Alliance rather than as isolated explorers trying to hide their capabilities. Tell Captain Martinez that we're en route, Stone replied. and remind him that he's not just representing Earth anymore. He's speaking for 800 worlds that chose cooperation over conquest. As their transport lifted off from the former council complex, Kane settled back in his seat and pulled up a holographic display, showing the current state of Alliance expansion. The map revealed a growing network of voluntary partnerships that stretched across a significant portion of the galaxy, connected not by conquest or intimidation, but by mutual benefit and shared defense. You know what I think? Kane said, studying the display. I think we're going to encounter that hypothetical hostile species sooner than we expect. And when we do, they're going to discover the same thing the Council did. What's that? Kane's smile carried the same predatory confidence that had first unsettled the galactic powers, but now it represented something different. Not the threat of a lone predator, but the collective strength of hundreds of species united by choice rather than force. They're going to discover that the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest fleet or the most advanced weapons. It's the one that can convince others to fight beside them willingly. He gestured to the map, where new Alliance members were joining the network even as they watched. The Council fell because they ruled through fear. Any future enemy will fall because we lead through inspiration. Stone nodded, understanding the truth of his words. Humanity had indeed declared war on the galaxy, but the war they had fought wasn't one of conquest. It was a war of ideas, a conflict between two fundamentally different approaches to civilization and power. The galaxy had trembled not because humanity was strong, but because humanity had proven that strength itself could be redefined. Victory didn't require domination. Power didn't require oppression. Leadership didn't require fear. As their ship accelerated toward the unknown species waiting in Sector 447, both humans felt the weight of responsibility and the excitement of possibility. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and dangers they could barely imagine, but whatever they encountered out there among the stars, they would face it not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners in the greatest cooperative venture in galactic history. The age of the Council was over. The age of the Alliance had begun, and across 1,000 worlds, beings who had never known freedom looked up at the stars and saw hope shining in the darkness.